Can you even believe that we are already on principle number 3 of how to hustle with heart? And this one is a single word. It's an action word. It is a word that even in our desire and our commitment to redefine hustle and pursue success God's way is the hardest thing to do, and that is surrender. What is it about being an ambitious woman of faith in business that we feel like we need to white knuckle it and be in self-reliance, right? So, we're talking about surrender and in the action of surrender, it means to completely let go of, give up our will. It is subjecting our thoughts, our ideas, our deeds to God's will and fully accepting his sovereignty. And it's really about Jesus take the wheel, right? It's really about letting the Lord drive and letting him lead us. Very often I describe my journey to being your Hustle with Heart coach as ambitious woman gets lost on her way to the top, finds Jesus. He says, "Why don't you let me drive for a while and you hold the map," which is the Bible. And then after some time, when he feels that I've done some healing and repenting, etc., and I've learned some lessons, that he says, "Now go share that map with other women like you." And that's what I've been doing for 4 years with the podcast and with the book and in my one-on-one coaching and in my group coaching. But man, detaching ourselves from the chaos of life and the definitions of success and the accolades and anchoring our identity to all of that is challenging because it means that we no longer follow like the lemmings, right, off the side of the mountain, that we choose instead to seek his truth and to act on it. And it means that we get up every day. And as always, I tell you, bookend your days with the Lord, right? Start your day, end your day with him. But we get up every day and we say, "Lord, where do you want me to go today? Whom do you want me to serve?" It's it's surrendering our work, our outcomes, our plans, our goals, all of it to him and allowing him to define and direct us, right? That we've talked about in our 4 keys. And surrender is a discipline because we have to get up every day committed to surrender. But it is only in that we allow ourselves to be the clay in his hands to mold us and to develop us. And there's the 4th key, right? So make sure you get down in the show notes and get your copy of the 4 keys to redefine hustle. So again, I want to remind you, we're walking through the 5 principles of how to hustle with heart. This comes from my book, Pursuing Success God's Way, a practical guide to hustle with heart. That link is down in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm flashing you a copy of it. By the way, did you know I have a YouTube channel? Go check out the show notes for that as well. And it is building all of this on the foundational verses of John 15, 4 and 5, which is all about abiding in the vine. So action is necessary for surrender. And I only have a couple of scripture references for you in this episode because I want to share with you a little bit about behind the scenes of my surrender and what that looks like for me. So I want to start with Psalm 46:10. Sometimes I think this is a little bit overused, but then when I think about the fact that when it says to be still, it's to cease striving. And to know that I am God is to recognize and understand. And our surrender is wrapped in that recognition. Our surrender is that we are resting in him and employing our faith and knowing that he is God and having faith and then taking that step of trust like we talked about last week, that he will do what he promises without us having to shoulder it all, without us having to be self-reliant. That also means, however, friends, that we surrender the outcome. Now, for a long time in my network marketing business, that was sort of a mantra, right? Surrender the outcome, surrender the outcome, surrender the outcome. And yet, while that perhaps was not said from a biblical foundation, surrendering the outcome is what the whole story of the Bible is, right? It's surrendering to his sovereignty and his plan and his will and his way and his timing and all of that. And friends, I don't know about you, but as a recovering driver, striver, and achievement chaser, surrender is really hard for me. It's really hard for me because I tend to beat myself up a little bit when I surrender and think that I'm being lazy, or when the action looks different than I thought it should look, or the outcome doesn't show up the way I thought it would or in the timing. Surrender is not my comfort zone. And since they say that life begins outside of your comfort zone, and since I believe that we are told to be courageous because the Lord knew that left to our own devices, we would stay in our comfort zones, that he's constantly calling us out of our comfort zone. Listen, walking on water was not Peter's comfort zone. And yet the Lord said, come. Right now, my Bible study group is studying Revelations. And in Revelation 2, let me turn to that really quickly. This is not a scripture that I was going to give you. I think it is at the begin. Sorry, I hit the microphone. At the beginning of 2. No. In 1, Jesus says, come here, right? That is not in John. I mean, yes, following Jesus is in his comfort zone, but he's about to see some things that are a little bit crazy, right? So surrender does pull us out of our comfort zone. And it requires us to have courage over comfort, to lean into him and into his grip. But here's what I know, like I know, in my journey, in the journey of the women that I've coached, that when we surrender, there is a feeling of peace, there is a feeling of freedom. And at the same time, there will be spiritual warfare. So let me give you an example of a couple of ways that the enemy lies to us as we surrender. So, number one, the enemy takes scripture out of context and twists it around. And he loves to do that and turn it into a lie. So in Colossians 3:23, it says, whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men. So lie number one, the enemy will tell you is that you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough. He'll distort this scripture and play upon our discomfort in resting and say, did God really tell you to rest? Did God really make you to rest? Is that really part of working his way? Because you're not moving very fast, or you're not really working enough. You're not taking enough action. You can't possibly build a business in surrender. And if you're not building a business, then how are you honoring God? That's kind of what it sounds like in my head sometimes, right? That he didn't really tell me to surrender everything. I mean, somebody's got to drive. Well, the truth is, God's driving, right? But this is where he twists it. The other way that he twists it, lie number 2, is that he may say something like, this isn't surrender. It's actually apathy. Like you just don't really care anymore. And he would lead us to believe that surrender is giving up, that surrender is not being resilient or steadfast, right? That maybe you don't care enough to do the work, or you don't have a passion for it anymore, or it's not very exciting. And that kind of hits us right in the gut, doesn't it? And here's the thing is that while apathy is such a harsh word, surrender is about keeping Christ at the center. Surrender is about releasing the control and the timing and the outcomes, like we talked about. Apathy is you don't care. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. No, no, no. That's different. That even sounds different and feels different, doesn't it? And here's the thing is that when you start to talk about waiting on God or praying over this decision, you may have people in your life, perhaps in your business tribe, if you will, who kind of look at you sideways like, what do you mean you're not going to do the work? What do you mean you're waiting on God? Like, what exactly does that mean? right? Yeah. Yeah. And they may think that you're being apathetic and you're not willing to do what it takes. But friend, that is not true. That is not true. Because surrender is the action. Surrender is the principle we follow. Principle 3 of our Hustle with Heart journey. And in these moments, surrender is allowing him to have you in his grip. See, the world clamors for our attention. It's like loud and flashing neon and all the things that want us to keep going and go for more and do more, right? So, on our Hustle with Heart journey, I believe we sort of come to not just a fork in the road, but like a triple tine fork in the road, right? Where we're presented with this choice. We can choose apathy and we can think, I don't even want to be connected to the vine. This is too hard. What's the point? It doesn't matter. We could choose anxiety, constantly churning, like, I don't know what to do. Where should I go? And which way? And all of those things. Or we can choose surrender and think something along the lines of, what am I worried about? God's got this. He made me for a purpose. He has perfectly prepared and positioned me in this business for this time for a specific reason. And like we talked about last week, while I can't see that whole staircase, I know that I can step in trust because he's got me. And every time I surrender, and I see this in my clients, every time progress happens. Maybe it's an advancement in business growth. Maybe it's a new client. Maybe it's a lesson. Maybe it's a new connection. Maybe it's an opportunity to speak or be on a podcast or whatever that is. What I know is that when you surrender, you are freed from self reliance and that he blesses your obedience of surrender in some way, whatever that looks like. Here's an exercise that I want you to do. Take out a piece of paper, an index card, whatever, and just look over even the last year at how God has provided when you've surrendered and make a list. My list is on my bulletin board. I'm looking at it right now. It says, remembering God's blessings and what he's delivered us through. Put that somewhere that you can see it every day so that when you're tempted to take his direction of doing 2 or 3 things, and doubling it or tripling it, right? When you're tempted to fall into overachievement, when you're tempted to be spiraling and overwhelmed, when you're tempted to be like, am I being surrendered or am I apathetic and I need to be doing more? That you will look back at this list and remember how he provided because of your surrender. You know, sometimes God is waiting for us to surrender so that he can move. And friends, that surrender is an action and it is a choice that you get to make, but it is part of what it means to hustle with heart. It's a single word, but it's incredibly powerful. So, next week, we are going to take on principle number 4. I want to remind you that it is not too late to do your 90-day planning. And there's a tool down in the show notes, my 90-day tool. Go download that. But I also want to remind you that part of surrender is realizing you need a community around you, or you need a coach to help you with strategy, accountability, focus, encouragement. So go pick up your free visitor pass to come to my next live group coaching on Friday, November 4th. This is my Rooted group coaching community. We want to have you come and visit and experience what it's like to not only work with me, but to be part of a community that leverages accountability and prayer to grow business. Surrender doing this on your own, friend. You don't have to do that. God is there and there's a community built in. Come check it out. And until next time, I pray for and encourage you to tune out the world, tune into God's truth, and turn up focus. And I'll see you on the next episode.